What are you supposed to do when your once beautiful watch, clasp, or bracelet has started to look a little too beat up for your liking? In this video, I'm going to show you a simple and foolproof way to bring back the proper brushing and polishing to your watch, clasp, or bracelet. And this is a key caveat. Only do this on stainless steel clasps or bracelets. This is not meant for coated materials or for precious materials. That being said, we're going to take the watch off of the wrist. This is a butterfly style clasp, and for my purposes I think it'll be fine to just not remove the clasp entirely, but just take off one side of the clasp so that I can rest this clasp securely on a solid surface. Once you've got your clasp all set up for polishing, refinishing, I would suggest putting down some kind of microfiber cloth that you would get at a typical eyeglass store, just so that you don't accidentally scratch up the rest of the case or other portions of the bracelet when you're working on this. Of course, make sure your clasp or bracelet is free from dirt or debris. Of course, wash it off. If there's any visible gunk on it, get that off first. If there's any kind of concerns about residual oils from your wrist or hand, just go ahead and buff that out a little bit on that polishing cloth that you have. Now, there are two products that I recommend as far as watch, clasp, or bracelet refinishing is concerned. Now, first we want to deal with brushed or satin surfaces. And for that, I recommend a wet or dry sandpaper, such as this 3M product. And the thing that I like about this pack is it comes with 4 different grits or 4 different grains. Basically, it's going to allow you to choose which grit is going to best, in your estimation, suit the grain that's done on a watch in a factory, which of course all these stainless steel products, when they're brushed in a factory, it's done on a big wheel. It's not something that you could ordinarily replicate at home. So I'm going to go with 1500 grit, kind of in the middle, and use it in a wet format, get the paper wet, for this clasp in particular, which has a pretty standard issue brushing. It's a very light brushing, almost a satin, but there's definite lines. Now for the polished surfaces, as you can see, there's also some polishing on the edges of this clasp. I recommend Cape Cod Cloth. Say that 5 times fast. Cape Cod Cloth. These work extremely well for polishing, and one simple cloth lasts forever, and you only need to use a tiny little bit for this kind of polished clasp. It works great with like the sides of a Rolex Oyster bracelet that are polished, or center links on an Omega bracelet. It's very nice polishing cloth and is very effective. So a wet dry sandpaper and a Cape Cod cloth will be the main products that you'll need to refinish this clasp or your bracelet. Now, depending on the shape of your clasp or bracelet, you might want to consider getting one of these rubber sanding blocks. If you have a fairly flat surface, this is going to ensure that you're putting weight very evenly on the product that you're refinishing. Now, this is about the size of one link in a watch bracelet, so you would just go ahead and refinish your watch bracelet one link at a time, roughly. You're going to want to be very careful to brush it evenly along the edges, and so if you're trying to brush the whole bracelet this way, you're going to have to be careful to kind of move it along in a curved fashion so that every part of the bracelet is getting refinished equally. Now, this is absolutely overkill, but I did go ahead and take some painter's tape and tape the edges, since I have fairly angular beveled edges on this clasp, and these beveled edges are polished, and I'm going to be polishing them separately. Okay, we have our clasp all ready to be brushed, and we have our sandpaper, which is nice and wet. This is brand new sandpaper, so I don't need to worry about it being uneven. And we're just going to go very gently from, like I said, a horizontal direction on the clasp. You can see almost immediately the kind of marks that the sandpaper is going to make on your clasp with this wet dry sandpaper. And it's also nice and even. It's just going to be a matter of me doing it in a nice, consistent way. Okay, so this is about halfway, and as you can see, we've taken out a lot of the major scuffs that were originally in the clasp, and we have a fairly even satin finish. It looks pretty good at some angles, but there's still plenty of fine work left to be done, and I'm going to actually move up to a 2000 grit sandpaper next and get some of those little tiny scuffs out of there. Alright, at this point we've got a lot of the major scratches out of the clasp, and you can see that it still is a little uneven. It still shows some imperfections in the finishing, even though it's looking overall quite a bit cleaner. So what I'm going to do for this last part is just get a really nice flat surface. I'm going to use the rubber block here and just work this in a nice gentle way, trying to get my strokes as even as possible to get that perfect last bit of finish. It's going to be getting to the point where you're going to just have to make a judgment call if it's clean enough for you, or if you're going to really be a fanatic about getting out all the little scratches. We have a nice clean satin finish restored. You can tell there are still some micro scratches in there. I'm honestly not going to worry about them too much because the first time I rub this clasp up against a desk or something, it's going to get scratches like that. I'm just not going to stress about it. The edges of this are still pretty rough, so we're going to take that Cod Cloth and clean it up. These cloths are obviously saturated with a cleaner and polishing compound, and they're pretty smelly and they are kind of greasy, so just be aware when you're starting to use them that you may or may not have a sensitivity to the smelling chemicals of these Cod cloths. Okay, we've been working the edges with the Cod Cloth, and as you can see, the polish is definitely restored on all four of the sides. So it's still a little dirty, sorry about that. There are still some little micro swirlies on the polishing that, again, it's a matter of taste. If you really think it's important enough for you to dedicate that time to getting those polishes out, that's up to you. My opinion is they'll come back in a day, so it's not worth sweating too much over. I think this is starting to look pretty good. I think I might spend a little bit more time on this and call it a night. Overall, I'm really happy with how this turned out. It took me about an hour. I gotta admit, the most frustrating part of this is going to be trying to get the thumbnail of this now refinished clasp. It's just so shiny that I can't get my camera to focus. I guess that's a good problem to have. This kind of project is a labor of love, and I decided to just take my time in this video to give you a more real-world sense of the amount of work you'll need to put into it to get results that at least I'm happy with. Make sure to let me know what methods work best for you, and thank you for your thumbs up and for your subscription if you're not a subscriber. Thanks a lot for your time.